All right, we are back in business. Found the tripod. It's underneath a pile of rolled up leather. I have this tool, this pricking wheel, 3 millimeters. I got it in one of those. I didn't pay for it individually. I got it in one of those, like I think I mentioned before. I bought like a lot of old tools off of eBay. Like not like a lot, like many. I mean, there were many, but like a lot, like one batch of a lot of tools. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to go along these lines that we marked already with this, just so I know where to put down the stitches. And it's kind of a jerky process because it's going like every time it like steps. Sometimes it wants to go more, sometimes it wants to go less. You want to have a little bit of pressure on it so that you're sure that it marks the leather. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter how much it marks it, just that you can see it when it actually comes time to do the stitching. It's just helping you evenly space the stitches when the time comes. So doing the top line first. And this is actually this is fine. Like if you mess up, it's no big deal because the stitching is gonna hide most of these little things anyway. And if like one's too high, you can still put the stitching mark below. You don't have to follow them exactly. It's a guide. You see all those little dots right now? Those are what that did. And so those are where I'm gonna make the stitches next time around. If you want a higher stitches per inch, you have to get a higher, with one of these with more teeth. Doing the lower line now. This is going to be probably the trickiest one to do this just because of the broguing. I'm just trying to keep adequate distance from the broguing by following that line but not getting too close. That the stitches will interfere with the broguing. There we go. So another line. A couple of those seem like they might have touched the brogue holes, so when I actually do stitch, I'll make sure that it doesn't cross over, and I'll do it a little bit below those. But the point is that we know where the distance of the stitches should be. So I'm gonna do it all on this piece too. And this one I think I can go a little bit quicker. And if you have to lift your tool up off of the piece of leather for any reason while you're doing this and readjust, just make sure that you angle it so your tool goes back into one of those holes. I see now we're at the top. We want this top. There's one hole right there. We want the stitch going this way to start, so we look at the tool and we angle it so there's one of those dots pointing right down, and we set it right in that hole. And we go across. There we go. And then we come back down. Doing the same thing, setting the tool in the hole that we know that we're gonna end on, so our stitches are still evenly spaced. Again, we're gonna use the dots for the spacing of the stitches, and we're gonna use the lines as reference for the depth of the stitches. So if we missed the line a little bit, we can still use the line as the center spot of where the stitches should be. Now I'm just doing the second set of stitching. So see, I lift it off to rotate it, and I just pop it back into that same dot and carry on my merry way. I mean, in all honesty, this will hopefully be the last pair of shoes for the time being where I have to do this, because I'm trying to purchase a sewing machine right now, which would be very nice. been doing a lot of research on it, so I guess what I'm doing is I can discuss it, my findings, just for anybody that's curious. There's 3 types of sewing machines that you primarily want to look at. Those are going to be walking foot sewing machines that usually have some sort of compound feed where it's pulling the leather, like when you put it in the sewing machine, there's a little thing pulling on the bottom, and the foot of the thing steps and pulls, and there's usually a needle feed too, where the needle pokes in further and pulls back to it. The nice ones are like the Consus, the FAFs, PF, AFF, and Conso. I guess it's Conso because it's a sewing machine, it's not a sewing machine. But yeah, those walking foot is nice for leather. It's very good to hold the layers of leather together. They are pretty expensive though. You can get vintage ones. Usually cheaper. They're built like tanks usually. And if you do a lot of leather crafts other than just shoes, it's probably the way you want to go. Rupert? The other kind of feed is just a flat foot. That's a standard sewing machine where alright, that's enough. You don't need to sew right there. Just a flat foot where your typical sewing machine where it feeds through the bottom underneath of the fabric and the foot on top just kind of sits there. And those are gonna be your cheapest machines. And those can, if it's strong enough, those can be fine. I've been finding that like a lot of people will use vintage machines that have all steel gears in them, and they can do some decent leather work as long as you're not, doing sheaths and stuff, which requires a heavy duty machine. With like if you're don't be using 10-ounce layers of veg tan with a machine like that. But yeah, those can be had for a lot cheaper because there's a lot of vintage machines out there. But a lot of them aren't working is the problem. You gotta find one that's actually working and in good strength, and the motors can kind of suck on them. So you might need to replace the motor. Some more stitching. Did 2 lines there, another line around here on the top. Do this line back here. So I don't know if this is in frame, but it's also not terribly interesting. And the third kind of machine is a rolling foot. Rolling foot has like a little roller on the top, so that's nice for leather, especially for shoes, because the needle will come down. Like, so if this is the roller, the needle will come down the outside, and you can get really close to the edge and roll along and be very precise. Problem is that those can be very expensive, especially if the roller is, like some rollers are just like a freewheel. You can actually attach a freewheel roller to most flat, just non-walking foot machines, and it just kind of rolls along with the leather, which isn't too bad. But there's some that are geared wheels, so it's actually feeding the leather through from the top and bottom. Those are the ones you really want for shoe sewing, but those are very expensive. I think the cheapest one of those I found was used about $1,600. So I won't be getting one of those, not anytime soon. But if you look at the people that actually like make shoes in a way that they're trying to sell them and all that stuff. See, we got all our things pricked out and marked. People are actually trying to sell them. Those are what you want, especially with like a post bed. So like instead of just like a flat machine, there's like a post coming up like right here, and like so the stitch is elevated. The thread is, the needle is elevated up here, and there's like a post right here, so you can really like wrap your leather around the post and do angles and get inside the shoe and all that kind of stuff. That's really nice. I have an arm arm sewing machine where the arm is free, but it's not really working. And that has an old walking foot that only walks for the top. It's a little bit lame, but I mean, it's a nice machine, but in terms of what I want to do, it's not working well. And you know, I'm just gonna prick out the back line of this too. I wasn't gonna do this. I was gonna do it with the pricking irons, but you know, I might as well just do it. Might be faster this way than getting the pricking irons out. And I don't like using the pricking irons if it gets too late at night, because my garage is not insulated, and the neighbor is always complaining about sound at night. He's not complaining about my sound, because I usually stop working out there by 10 o'clock, but I can tell the implication is there. He just complains about sound in general. But yeah, so the post machine is nice, and our machine is nice. Flat is not ideal for leather work, especially if you're doing like bags and shoes. But you know, every feature is like more money. So you want a post bed with a rolling foot that's geared, you can pay $1,600 and you could be having it used. But I think there can't. I'm currently in the hunt for trying to find a machine for $200 or $300, or like maybe $100 or $200 actually, for that can just do a flat leather, because I could do a lot of this flat and I wouldn't have to do all this pricking and stitching. And then the things that do require a little bit of a curve, I could just do those by hand, and I don't think it would be too bad. Reduce my workload a lot, because we're gonna see that the stitching is going to be one of those things that just takes a ton of time relative to the rest of the process. In like, especially when you know it could be done very quickly with a machine. So I mean, we wouldn't have to do all this. We'd probably still do the line marking, just because I think it would help to guide the machine. Some machines have adjustable guides. Whatever I get probably won't have one, because that's just another feature that costs more money. And then, yeah, and you can upgrade the motors on the old ones. The old ones that can make it through leather, I may have mentioned this already, I'm kind of spacing out. The biggest issue is a lot of times the motor won't be strong enough, or it'll be worn out over time. But motors are pretty cheap on eBay if you're a little bit handy. I can't speak from experience. I haven't replaced one myself, but it seems like it'd be pretty easy. If you're making shoes, you're probably at least somewhat handy. You probably like to tinker. Yeah, but that's my journey for a sewing machine is in progress. But also, you know, one on a big industrial table with a strong motor would be nice, but also I don't have a ton of spots where I'd want to put that. So I've been kind of looking for one that'll be tabletop or tuck away into its, some fold away. The older ones fold away into their own little tables, which is nice. Wouldn't mind something like that. But yeah, anyway, I'm hoping this is the last pair of boots where I'm doing the stitching by hand, because it's arduous. It would make me think twice. It definitely makes you think twice about starting this process. So yeah, all of the pricking holes are done, I believe. I got them all done. So next up, I'm gonna be skiving this piece of leather down the back, because basically skiving is thinning out the leather like at a taper. So you like taper it down to that edge, because on this piece, this is this piece right here, and these seams, can't camera is different than I thought. So this is this piece right here, the vamp. And then these seams right here, they're skived underneath so that, let's see if you can see that. You can see on there. They're skived underneath so that where the seam meets, it's not like a big lump. The only lump is on the outside. There's no like, there's not gonna be like a, if I didn't skive them down, when I wore them, there'd be a big lump, or like a ridge right there, where you could see where the other piece of leather ended and was like pushing its way through in a square kind of way. So we don't want that, so we're gonna skive down this back part. I think this is the only piece we need to skive though. Oh, and we need to skive down, I think I already mentioned this, we need to skive down this throat strip because we want it to taper into that so that this isn't terribly thick, so when we put the boot hooks in, they'll actually fit. Okay, and also booze update. I'm not drinking any booze right now because it's not that late, and I'm still gonna be doing some other work and want some coffee.